And hi, everybody. Welcome to this series of CISO Talks, where we're going to talk to an old friend of mine, one of the smartest guys, one of the sharpest knives in the drawer, Matt Slavin. Matt Slavin is the founder of a new company, a 6-month-old company called CyAlly, your cyber ally. And Matt has had fantastic success. Matt and I met while I was CISO at Hertz, and he was one of the lead technical people in our cloud enablement team. And he was one of our best architects. And I always liked listening to Matt because he sometimes disagreed, but at the end, he was always right. So he would always argue his position and prove how right he was. And I'm Pete Nicoletti. I'm a field CISO at Checkpoint. And we're going to have a conversation with Matt about cloud security risks and what Matt and he's crafting, a journey to the cloud with his customers. CyAlly focuses on CMMC compliance, which is a very interesting area because there's 600,000 companies that are supplying equipment to the United States that require CMMC compliance. And he's had a lot of success with some of his new companies. He's got some ISSPs, he's got some colos, he's got some state hubs, and his company's only 6 months old. People vote with their wallets, and they find smart people. And Matt Slavin is one of the smartest. So welcome, Matt Slavin. How you doing, buddy?
Pretty good. Just standing on the shoulders of giants, sir. So it's awesome to be here.
Well, Matt, fantastic. Was there anything else you wanted to say about CyAlly before we jump right into things?
No. We're really kicking off in the industry and more and more into the CMC certification. And it seems to be a big challenge today between how do companies prepare for cybersecurity and federal requirements, and even from a perspective of companies moving to cloud, just some of the blocking and tackling of basics that maybe isn't so much covered today when you go through modern certification today on some of those best practices. So,
well, let's talk about that. You're architecting and you're consulting with customers and you're running their security. What are some of the challenges you're seeing with customers as they consider the cloud, move to the cloud, get their resources moved there? What are you seeing?
Yeah. So, I mean, security is right. It's about distance and depth, right? It's not a matter if they will get it. It's when they will, right? So the question comes back to is it's more of a mitigation stance. And so when you start to look at the guardrails or the framework of a cybersecurity program for cloud, firewall, WAF, that whole defense and depth posture kind of comes into place, right? But you're giving kind of conflicting messages because now you're told that cloud firewalls support IDS, IPS, and then you're told you can't move your firewalls from on-premise to cloud. And then when you talk to the vendors, you find out that you absolutely can, but then you also run into the fact that the cloud companies make you use their load balancers. So they're kind of always in the middle of that. And then even when you get all that figured out, there's an application security component to that, right? And so out of all of that said and done, a firewall is only as secure as you configure it to be. And so if you've got a skill set gap anywhere between beginning to end of that journey, that's all, it's kind of game over. So.
Yeah, we're actually seeing the same thing with that continuous cloud posture management, and misconfigurations are typically one of the highest percentage vectors of compromise. So when you're talking to your customers and you're walking them down the path of CMMC, and they're a lot of them are small customers. I know you have a lot of large customers, but small customers even have more of a challenge. They don't have the security professionals. They don't have perhaps the budget, and they certainly don't have the knowledge and awareness. So to walk us through some of the concerns that you work with a customer, because these are companies that are critical to national infrastructure. They're building parts for war fighters. They're building, they're supplying us with critical infrastructure, and that's that's why they are under the CMMC requirements. So you need to protect them. And we've had some breaches of some CMMC companies that have not gone well. So talk to us about some of the guidance and some of the challenges that you're counseling your customers with.
I'm going to steal a quote from a peer of mine, a very sharp gentleman, Jason Rowe, who said, "Letting the wolf guard the hen house." And separation of duties is such a big thing. And when you use the native cloud firewalls, typically the administration teams and typically most of the compliance control frameworks say that you have to have a separation of duties. So the issue is that, while security groups in cloud are layer 7 stateful firewalls, the issue is that they don't support IDS IPS. And then some of the newer services rolling out, they do support IDS IPS. But typically the developer has contributor rights in the subscriptions or owner rights in the same subscription, and they're managing their own firewalls and enabling bypass and trespass of those controls. And so you've almost single-handedly defeated that. And so, a lot of the major manufacturers that are out there, the higher end, firewall companies, they've created this blueprint pattern for a transit gateway model where you take two firewalls, place them in between a load balancer, and then they auto scale up and down as needed. So instead of having to have 1,000 firewalls in cloud, you can have it on demand. But with all of that said, right, you still have the challenge of how do you segment that? And so what we're seeing is the cloud frameworks giving more liberty to the third-party firewall industry. And because they're trying to adopt a zero trust model, what they're making it is that when you take two networks in cloud and connect them, you are peering them. And so what they're doing is they're creating this transit gateway network. And in that is your third-party firewalls. And so if you want to leave this subscription or come to the data center, you have to peer to the firewall stack before coming in and out. And what happens is if you have a developer who attaches a public IP to a subscription, the base routing doesn't allow it to work. So even if they fail that control, it pins them into the to the existing network that they're in. And we've seen a lot of success with third-party firewalls in that space. Again, it's about separation of duties, and you have to remove the overlay between the developer and the networking. Even though DevOps will clearly define that it really should be there, it really is a SecOps component, not just a DevOps component to that.
Well, those are awesome comments there, Matt. And you've got hands-on keyboard experience, so it's extremely valid concerns. We hear about misconfigurations all the time, and especially misconfigurations by rogue IT. Just people firing up cloud instances and popping workloads out there without normal IT. Now, of course, that's not going to happen in a small company, but there's all kinds of plate spinning in a large company. What do you do to kind of corral that risk? How do you address that, and how do you get that under the secure umbrella, so to speak?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So I wish I was the one that invented this, but the Cloud Security Alliance, they were just brilliant in doing this. And a lot of the people who came, like you, who came from that FedRAMP industry, that was part of that adoption to it. It's fascinating because the CCM, or the Cloud Control Matrix, is probably our biggest, it's our Bible. And what we do is we build, when I was at Deloitte, that's what we adhered to. A lot of our cloud subscription or subscribers to that model is we built, and we still do it for customers today, we build a common control matrix. And then instead of having a RACI, because that doesn't really work in cloud, we build in those master zero, do not trespass, do not pass go controls. Then we build in layer 1, which are platform controls. And then we move up the stack, up kind of the way NIST kind of adopts between platform, network, and application security. And each set of those controls have different owners. And so as we build that governance out, if you want to trespass against the layer 0 control, you're trespassing against the corporate compliance control, which you can't get exception for. But if you're trying to change like the timeout on your app or something like that, you're really in a level 1, level 2 control space. And so what we do is we try to bifurcate the conversation between you will not trespass and you can trespass. And so we're really also, at the end of the day, we're really just accepting what level of risk we want to take.
Well, I think the key thing is making sure that the business owner and the executives understand risk.
Yeah.
And that's where there's usually a disconnect between security nerds that don't know how to explain the risk or quantify the risk. And that's where you come in, because you know how bad things can get, because you were part of the WannaCry team at Hertz, and we were scrambling, and we were at a high level of risk for that. So you've seen what unpatched environments are, and people that don't understand risk and how to translate those complex technical concepts into business risk and business impact.
You cannot have speed to market without brand name protection. Because if I know how a SQL database is going to be deployed and it can't go public and it stays private, and I know how it's going to connect back to the enterprise while it's going through, those two firewalls or one firewall, the transit gateway coming back in, I've eliminated 90% of the architectural questions that I need to ask. So now I should be able to go to anyone in the business and say, you can build securely behind this firewall stack, behind this network stack, the security stack, and I can spin up accounts all day long. Now the only risk I have is the cost, right? So we typically see SDPs or our technology operating models when they're built with security and risk. It's kind of like, do I do GRC or integrated security controls? If I integrate those security controls into my architecture pipeline process, I can spin it, scale, and I don't make anyone blink twice because security is already baked in every time.
Well, we've known for years that baking security in early in the development and deployment process, it's far cheaper. So, we need more folks like you that are an expert and can consult at the beginning of a project rather than post-incident when everybody's crying and the shouting and the lawyers are billing $500 an hour for after an incident.
Yeah,
So
your insurance goes up, and yeah,
it was up.
IRs are expensive. And I think that's the other thing that we often overshadow as an industry too, is that we forget the pain of IR because IR has been so commoditized, right? And so there's another cyber company that we just did. It was a pretty big breach. They called us to do an IR on top of their IR because they were hosting this customer in cloud and they left everything public with the public IP. They had no firewalls in place for it. And so we were doing the IR as best we could, and we were as transparent as we could, but we ultimately had to say, guys, you were kind of at fault for this, right? So, pony up. But, they were also doing the IR. Again, the best posture to have is a posture that's transparent and that you can share on paper and that your vendors can back you when something happens. You want them in the room with you when something public hits.
Yeah, that's some great advice. And, not to plug Checkpoint too much, but that's one thing we do real well. We have great partners that get engaged with the customers and work with customers. And, that's just a key concept right there, is to get the experts in the room. And, it's sometimes the blame spinner spins around and it's your fault, and you got to man up and deal with it and learn from it and make sure you don't make that mistake again.
And in a company that's a little bit weird too, yeah, because and again, not to plug product or brand, but again, we probably find 30 different malware types a week, right? And so I found that interesting that Checkpoint reached out to look at our malware strains and asked us about those things, right? And I think that's what makes a good vendor is the fact that it's the networking within the cyber community of practice, not just reading it off everyone else's sticks data and then making comparisons off threat intel with the IOCs that are published. You think you need both. 99% is not enough these days. So
you got that right. And we do have a great threat research team, and that is true. I remember when that happened, looking into some of the stuff that you were seeing. There's you see research out that there's about 60 0 days each year. Right now we're dealing with Cisco, VMware, and F5 0 days. All security vendors, all with the worst ironic issue with your security vendor actually bringing a security issue to the table rather than preventing it. So, once again, back to your security in depth, and making sure that there's not one single fault that can get you in trouble. I'm sure you have some thoughts on that.
No, I heard somebody really smart say this once. We all have SIM, and we're all still getting breached, right? And it's fascinating because we've got more intelligence than we've ever had before, but we've had more security breaches than we've ever had before. And a big concern is the fact that our firewalls today, and not just firewalls, but our security tools, are using open source, and they're not following the same application security patterns that we enforce down. I mean, it's a big supply chain risk. And so, I'm grateful that we're looking at supply chain now, but at the same time, SIM is not like, I don't really care to know at 3 a.m. that the event's happening in a customer account. I care to know how fast the IDS subscription picks up and blocks the threat, or at least that, Cloudflare is a great example of that too, is they pass out a lot of beta sourcing before they get back that information. I know Checkpoint does a lot of that too, where they communicate with the MSPs or the MSSPs in the industry to get that data back. To me, that's what I'm looking for, is not just intel passed around. I'm looking for boots on ground. And I'm also looking to see that it's been implemented on the customer accounts. They're getting that threat data live, because again, knowing it is, as G.I. Joe said, half the battle, right? I need to stop it when it's happening. So,
well, you're really kind of hitting the whole point of our founder Gil really hammers home is prevention rather than detection. If just like this Log4j 0 day, we were the only vendor out there that prevented that from impacting customers. So, not to plug Checkpoint too much, it's supposed to be a generic conversation on cloud security risk, but you brought it up, and boy, that really smart guy that talked about SIMs, I wonder who that guy is. I also said every company that's ever been PCI certified, every one of them is, not every one of them, but every large company that's been breached that has been PCI certified, it's just a low bar. We really need to up our game. And the way we're going to up our game is call Matt Slavin at CyAlly and check him out and work with him and his team, especially on CMMC compliance, a critical area for our federal suppliers. And Matt, I really enjoyed chatting with you again. I always enjoyed your viewpoints and your architecture ideas. You were always ahead of the game, and it really is showing in your ongoing success. So, you have any last minute thoughts for us there, Matt?
No. Look forward to the industry and the next wave of next generation firewalls to come out on the market. So,
well, they're coming. Well, fantastic, Matt. Hey, thank you so much for your time today, and we really hope that people are getting this message, and if they have some questions, they can reach out to you. I'll make sure that your contact information is in the trailer. Awesome. And with that, we're going to end this little session. Thank you very much for joining us. And let's see here.